Nishad Francis. Hello, as I said, my name is Nishad Francis, and I'm here to talk about my experience as a first-generation American and how that shaped me. But before that, we should probably talk about one thing that probably confuses you guys, the name. What's with the Francis, right? So, to talk about that, we have to go into my family history. My mom and dad were born in India, in small rural villages. My mom in a small village named Nagargoil, and my dad in Thoothukudi. And my dad's name is Francis Amaraj. And in their culture, it was tradition for him to give his first name to my last name. And it makes no sense, so there's no point in even looking at it like that. But basically what it is that the names are fluid, and there's no rigid first and last name. So they kind of spread it down. So they both grew up in poverty. It wasn't easy to get 3 full meals a day. Sometimes their lunch would be rice, and their dinner would be the water that was left over from boiling it. And that's basically how they grew up. So when my dad and mom got the opportunity to come to America to work as software engineers, they took the opportunity to live the American dream. And I was born here, and my sister later as well. So we spent our entire life here. And I kind of found this balance between my Indian self and my American self. And I found myself sometimes straying away from what people consider your average Indian, and that all started with my last name, Francis. And the reason our names are Francis is because we're all Catholic. And I know that's really surprising for Indians to be. Most of us are Hindu, which is completely true. But my family has grown up in a very Catholic atmosphere. 2 of my dad's sisters are nuns in a chapel in Spain. And my entire family has been born around that identity. And from day one, I've basically been born with that idea of not being the same as your average day-to-day Indian. And I found that as I continued to grow. When I was about 3 or 4, I decided that I kind of wanted to play piano. I wasn't sure why, and it had nothing to do with my heritage things, but I just found myself wanting to explore my own path. I enrolled in a piano class with my teacher. Her name was Annie at the time, and I started getting into piano. It wasn't easy. I remember my first performance, I was playing a song called Freeway. I was bad. I forgot half the music, and I was just struggling to finish, and I eventually gave up and almost started crying. But I decided that I really wanted to continue because it was something I loved. And I realized that I kind of started straying away, as I said, from that average Indian meaning, but I followed that through. A few years later, I started playing basketball. I tried out the average Indian sports, soccer, tennis, didn't really work for me. And I liked the idea of putting a ball in the hoop, so I was like, why not follow what I love? So I started playing basketball. It's really weird, most people in India don't really hear about it. I mean, you know LeBron James, Michael Jordan, but other than that, there's not much to know. But I kind of started following this trend. A few years later, I realized that I kind of liked history in school. I got the opportunity to go to Santa Ana Courthouse a few years ago, and that was really nice seeing everything. And I kind of grew up expecting myself to like science. My parents are software engineers. I have uncles and aunts who are in the IT tech department. I have them, some are engineers. And so I kind of grew up in this STEM category. But I realized myself reaching out to more of the humanities, loving history and loving English, and kind of relating to that kind of thing. It's not the best picture, but it's the point across. But I kind of realized that I love the evidence and the research rather than just lab experiments and mathematical equations. So that was kind of a big shift because there's no one really in my community that's more of a history nerd. Everyone's into science and medicals and stuff, but I realized I really wanted to follow through with this. And enter high school, and I make a drastic choice. I decided to join the school choir. Well, to be honest, I didn't want to join at first. My parents kind of forced me to. But then I realized that that was something I really loved to do, and I continued to do it. This wasn't just straying away from Indian culture. This is straying away from everything I knew. I don't really know anyone that's in choir. If people are in music, they're usually in the band or orchestra, or they're in sports like soccer or tennis. But I found myself kind of going toward a musical route, and as weird as it was, and as unexpected it was, I became a person in choir. I was an alto the first year and a bass the second year. It makes no sense, but our school was small, so I needed to adjust. And I decided I was pretty good at it. I even got a solo and all. So, come that moment, I realized that I'm basically breaking stereotypes here. I'm not following what's expected to be. Otherwise, I would have never done choir in the first place. And that led me to make a huge life-altering decision. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer when I grew up. And I thought about a doctor, I thought about being a scientist and all that. I had a brief firefighter stint in there too. but I realized that what I really wanted to be was a lawyer. And in 9th grade, when our mock trial club was starting up, I decided that's something I wanted to pursue. I quickly became the vice president and I founded it, becoming a vital member and helping our club move forward. And that was really a huge eye-opening moment for me, where I realized that I can be whoever I wanted to be, not just what was expected. I thought I'd like computers and things, I really tried, but it just wasn't for me. And I realized that speaking, like I'm doing right now, is my real passion. So in that moment, I felt really disconnected from where my roots were. And then I realized that there's a huge part of me that I just haven't thought about, my Indian culture, which is still vital to who I am. We go to India every 2 years. I look kind of creepy in the back there, but this is a moment where we were just in India traveling with family, going around to places, and I realized that I love talking to my family. I love speaking our native language, Tamil, at home. I love looking and just eating traditional foods. And I keep a lot of that culture. When we go to India once in a while, we eat off banana leaves. The logic being that it allows you to become more naturally invested in the food rather than something artificial like a plate. And I found all these things that I wasn't really used to, but I enjoyed. And I realized that I've been looking at this the wrong way. I've been ignoring one side of me. So then I started doing Indian classical music. Let's take a moment to address how Indian this picture was. Can't go any more than that. But I started singing this Indian devotional music. And as you can see, there are Hindu gods in the background, which is probably kind of weird. Why is he doing that? But it really wasn't a problem for me, because the entire thing about the Indian culture was that everyone was embraced and welcomed, and you can share your beliefs and what you want to do regardless of your point of view. And that was really enjoyable, being able to sing devotional songs for the culture and the meaning that it brought to me. And I kind of realized recently what it all ties back to, the idea of balance. And I felt that that's really nicely symbolized in this picture. I have my American ideals on the left and the Indian ideals on the right, with the bride having a veil and an Indian sari. And that kind of represented what I wanted to be. I realized that I can't shut down half of who I am just to think about what I should be. In the process of wanting to be a lawyer so bad, I almost forgot about the simple pleasures, the little things you get when you eat a bowl of rice or off a banana leaf or something like that. And I realized that the importance to life is the balance. Whether it's culture or just leisure versus trying to make the world a better place. Everyone has these two different values that they need to balance out. And I realized that instead of forgetting one of them, we need to be both. You can't completely ignore one side of you, otherwise you don't become who you are. And I realized this in the process of finding who I am through music and law and just being Indian. I realized that I love who I am because I'm everything. I'm everything that I wanted to be, and I don't ignore anything just for the sake of it. So when it comes to one thing to leave you guys with, I just want to tell you guys that the times make it hard. You may be unsure what to do, but never forget that who you are doesn't have to be what you're supposed to be. It all depends on what you feel. No matter how small it is, no matter how insignificant you think it may be, just talking to your friends in a different language or something as big as changing your career, it all matters and changes who you are to make yourself who you want to be. Thank you.